In this video, we're going to take a look at how to use the blind hemming machine. Let's start first with some of its features. We have a thigh bar or knee bar underneath that presses the bottom of the machine down so we can slide fabric in. We also have this movable table that allows us to use just the small cylindrical part or the whole base, sliding the fabric over top. Then we have an interesting few details in here, a bent needle and a single thread. The single thread comes up from the back and goes down through just one single tension knob. We'll go through the threading process in a moment, but let's take a closer look inside where the work is happening. Here we have an arm that reaches and brings the thread over, and then the needle scoops that thread back up again. That's how it's able to use only a single thread. Then we have the channel right in here, which is where we are aiming to put the edge of our fabric. Finally, we have somewhat of a presser foot in reverse. This item that you see me moving with my knee is what presses the fabric up and allows the needle to skip up and grab just a few threads. Finally, our dial over here is the more or less pressure on this moving piece. The piece that moves with my knee, the reverse presser foot that is pressing the fabric up into the channel. To the left is loose or less pressure, and to the right is tight or more pressure. Now let's take a look at threading. Our blind hemming machine uses a thinner thread. It's called Scala 200. The exact colors and number are written in the specific supplies sheet. Let's snip off our thread and put on our new cone. Then we'll tie a simple knot to pull our new thread through. Nice and tight. Now we'll release the pressure by pushing our knee bar and then pick up the tail of the thread near the eye. Gently pull the thread through, making sure that it goes through each step without breaking. And finally, if we're lucky, it will even go through the eye. Oop. We'll snip it off and thread it through. Using our tweezers, we're going to thread up from the bottom of the needle through the eye. There we go. And then we'll just pull this thread and let it rest in front. Simple as that. Now our dial up here is the only tension dial for our single thread. Again, lefty, loosey, righty, tighty. It's important that the tension is correct and we can tell when we're stitching if the loops are too tight or if the loops are too loose. Let's start sewing and we'll be able to take a closer look. So we have the bottom of the pant leg here. We're going to use this as a sample. This is why we like to keep these bits when we cut them off. We're going to slide this pretend pant hem on, push our thigh bar to release the reverse presser foot, and then let that presser foot come back up. We need to make sure that this arm is free and not stuck up on the machine. It needs to be loose, but in place. And the edge of our pretend hem, where the serging is, needs to be right in the channel, right in here. See how there is a break between these two metal pieces? We are aiming to put the edge of our hem directly in there where the needle will pick it up. Okay, we are ready to sew. These machines have a tendency to move fast. It's okay to stop and readjust as we are sewing. Take a look at how the fabric feels. Is it pulling? Is it tight? Is it stuck? Or is it moving freely through my fingers? It's moving freely, and we want to make sure that we're not pulling on it either. We do not want to pull it tight. If you pull the fabric too tight, the needle cannot grab the threads, the few threads that it needs to pick up to complete this hem correctly. So we need to make sure that we are guiding the fabric, but not pulling, just letting it move underneath the needle. As we come back around, we can see that the tension is beautiful because it's almost impossible to see where that little thread looped through. Let's come all the way back to a seam. Now that we've reached a seam, we're ready to pull the fabric off. There is no back stitch on this machine. It's just important that we pull the fabric off the correct way so that this single thread doesn't unravel. Now, when we have finished our seam and we're ready to pull the fabric out, we're going to use the hand wheel turning away from us to move this arm almost all the way back over. Then we're going to use our little snippers and just snip that thread right there in between the arm. Then release our presser foot, pull the fabric out, and just pull that little tail to tighten. Now we've secured the end and our hem is finished. Very clean. We'll trim off the extra if we need to. Now let's take a look at the other side. See how these little bits are where the needle picked up the thread, but they're almost imperceptible. That's what makes the blind hem blind. Finally, let's take a look at how to replace the needle. The needle in this machine is interesting because it's bent. The type of needle that we use for this machine is a 75 size and a ballpoint. It helps the needle slide through the fabric easier. The screw holding the needle in place is right here on the front of the machine. We're going to gently loosen that, but only enough to let the needle out, not enough to take the whole screw out. We want to leave that in place. And then, because the needle is bent, we're going to slide it out and unthread it. Whenever we replace the needle, as usual, it is now garbage. So let's throw this away immediately so we don't confuse it with good needles. Now we've got our new needle. Look closely at this needle. You can see that there is a flat edge and a curved edge, kind of like our domestic machine needles. There's the flat edge, there's the curved edge. We want to put the flat edge up against the back of the machine. This silver plate that's held on by the screw can move, and we want to make sure that we move it forward so that we can slide our needle in behind. We'll loosen it a little bit more. There we go. Then we're going to make sure that the needle comes just up to where this break is. See where the thread goes through this hole? That's the backstop for this needle. So we're holding that in place with this hand and here against the plate. Now we're going to tighten it up a little and then adjust. We can see that the needle is way too high. We need to sit it down into this channel. So let's loosen it a little again, and now sit the needle so that it is down in that channel. Perfect. Now let's tighten it again from there. Okay, good, nice and tight. So as you can see, the eye of the needle is just barely not entering this channel, which allows us to complete the threading by bringing our thread up through the new needle.